Okay, whenever
Whenever we're ready. Okay.
Mayor would like to start.
Sure, then let's call to order this City Council special meeting Friday, May 7, 2021 at 8:34 a.m. Jenny, do you want to lead us in the pledge?
Certainly. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, Robin, can we have roll call, please?
Yes. Councilmember Kong,
Here.
Councilmember Garcia,
Here.
Councilmember Ellis,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Schwartz,
Here.
Mayor Mahovey.
Here.
Thank
Okay, on to public comment. Notice to public, this time is set aside to receive public comment on matters not calendared on the agenda. When recognized, please state your name and address for the record, and please limit your comments to 3 minutes. Under California law, the City Council is prohibited from generally discussing or taking action on items not included on the agenda. However, we may briefly respond to comments or questions from the public. Jenny or Robin, do we have any public comment at this time?
I do not see any public comments on our public comment email, and we have not received anything prior to the meeting. I do not see any waved hands, and Jenny, can you confirm?
Yes, there are no raised hands.
Thank you.
Okay, then we will move onto our budget workshop, where we will continue to review our discussion of the City of Bishop fiscal year 2021-2022 budget, where last time we managed to get through all of the general budget items, and so now we have the extra funds, they're funds, right? Yeah, or the extra accounts. Jenny, you want to give us a little quick intro, or?
Yes, good morning, everyone. Mayor and City Council members, we're going to continue going over the budget that we started on May 5th. I think we are going to continue with the sewer funds, and I want to go ahead and share my screen.
Okay.
Jenny, can we go first?
Oh, for Sunrise Mobile Home Park?
Sunrise,
As
please.
long as Destin doesn't mind.
is that okay, Destin?
That's
I know.
fine. Fine with me.
Thank you.
Okay.
I appreciate it.
All right,
Well,
Sunrise
thank-
has a revenue of 122,000 in fiscal year 21-22. In year 2, we have 125. Year 3, we have 129. Year 4, we have 133. And year 5, we have 137. Sunrise expenses are 146 in year 1, 349 in year 2, 152 in year 3, 155 in year 4, and 158 in year 5. It does leave us a shortage, but we'll go down and review what they're asking for within their budget.
So if I remember correctly, historically, the Sunrise Mobile Home Park as a service that the city provide has always led to somewhat of a deficit, but it's typically on order of $20,000 a year. Is that correct? Or am I just misremembering things?
Yes, that's correct. They do operate at a deficit. We did sell a few mobile homes last year, so we did earn some money. That did bring down that deficit.
Mhm.
And unfortunately, I left my fund balance sheet in the office, so I can't give you their balance.
Carrie, was there anything in particular you wanted to call out? I mean, obviously, there's a major capital improvement that we're scheduling for next year, but the year after. Do you want to comment on what that is?
Yeah, so just kind of going through each year, we anticipate that we're going to have to do driveway repairs and replacements. Not necessarily that will happen, but we would like to be prepared for that. And then in year 2, we do have a road and front irrigation replacement. if you've ever driven through Sunrise, you will see that there are several trip hazards due to the cracks that have occurred over years of the asphalt being in place. They have done crack seal on them, but it's just a Band-Aid, and eventually they have to do it again to make sure that our seniors aren't tripping. They like to walk around their neighborhood and visit each other. So we are hoping that we'll be able to find a grant, either that supports the low-income senior housing or something. Dustin and I were talking in regards to transportation, if there's something out there that will help offset that cost. It is something that we have been looking at for about the last 10 years. And it keeps getting pushed off and pushed off.
And is there any reason that something like a road would fall under Sunrise Mobile Home as opposed to Public Works?
That would be a good question for Dustin, actually.
Yeah, so that is not a road that goes through there. That's a private driveway. And I've also been looking for some funding because she's absolutely correct. It's at the point where it basically really needs a rehabilitation project done and done correctly with sidewalks. So people aren't rocking in the driveway. But it doesn't meet the road standards to be applicable for like STIP projects or something.
But I mean, in principle, this item could go into the Public Works area as opposed to Sunrise. Or does that matter on a financial standpoint?
I would agree with you that it could be Public Works, but I think that at the end of the day, it would still be from the general fund.
Well, and we do have currently one mobile home that is going to be empty next week for sale, and 2 others that will be sold once they're vacant. So hopefully, that when that comes up, it'll help offset as well.
I have a question about the long-term vision of Sunrise. I mean, historically, we've been subsidizing this housing through the general fund, and we do have a housing crisis. And is it possible, we own this land, correct? This is our city-owned property. So is the vision to just keep subsidizing the tenants, even though we own the property? Is the goal to just continue to operate, not at a loss, but maybe get it to be where it just pays for itself in perpetuity? Or could we look at it as an opportunity to slowly, maybe when these people that have bought their properties, move them once they no longer live there, maybe once they sell, have a bigger goal, like put in more housing in this location, like develop a parcel that actually can accommodate a lot of people? I don't know, like this seems like it's a property we own. Should there be more of a vision for housing with something that we actually can do with it? Or do we want to just keep it as a property that, has, I don't know, how many people live at Sunrise?
There's 40.
So do we want to continue to just keep it where it pays for itself for 40 people, or could we get 100 people on that property? I don't know. I'm just thinking like this is potentially a good place that the city could strategically get more housing if we have a plan in place with this property. I don't know what the goal is, but it seems like we're operating right now as we just want it to pay for itself, no longer subsidize it with general fund money.
Right. And initially when the project began, we actually received funding from the state, so it wasn't subsidized by the city.
Right.
And eventually the state found loopholes, so we always had to pay money back. That's how we ended up kind of where we are. They set the standards and we always had to pay them everything that we were making on top of what we had. So, and then a couple of years ago also, there were funds that were taken for the cost savings plan out of Sunrise. And so that kind of dwindled all of that down. So now what we're trying to do is play catch up, basically. We do have the rent increase in place, and we have the units that are going to be coming up for sale. With that, we'll have lower maintenance costs because we'll only be maintaining the irrigation and the lawns in the front. So that will definitely help to keep those costs down. Long term, I don't know. I mean, obviously that's going to be up to council. There would definitely be the question of you have these units that are now all owned by these tenants. Where do we put the mobiles and where do we put the tenants while we're building something larger? So,
Right, that's where you come. Right, that's where you come to the plan. And I don't know if this is something that we want to talk about, but it seems to me it's a strategically great location. It probably could house more than 40 people. What do we do? I don't know. I mean, could we, it's just something I think it's a really good piece of property that we own that we could address this crisis with instead of just keeping it status quo, or maybe we want to keep it status quo. I don't know, but I think
Karen,
this is.
Are you envisioning something like, I mean, Silver Peaks is going right next to it. So are you envisioning something of like seeing how Silver Peaks go and then maybe learning from that and emulating that sort of a model for this property?
I'm just thinking, no, I'm just thinking, can we get more people on this piece of property in a way that makes sense for everything and everyone, or do we want to just keep it as is? Which is an okay thing to do too.
I think we want to keep it as is until we have a bigger plan.
Just to
We
let you
don't
know,
want to
Jim has
subsidize.
his hand up.
Jim, sorry.
I think Karen, kudos for bringing this forward. I think it's the kind of vision we have to look at. I look at, I kind of like the concept you're going with. If we were to say, as units, because we're gonna have to buy these from people. We own the property technically, but I'm sure they're not going to say you guys can have your mobile homes back. But if we were to, as things move along, it is displace people. But say take the west part of the thing, and purchase it, clear it, and put in the housing units similar to Silver Peaks. I think what we can do is change the plan of the city and the housing element quickly. I mean, not quickly, but we can make a difference instead of, like you're saying, Karen, it's the same 40 units that are eventually going to get older. You move on to the next thing, and if we could house 80 people by putting some kind of townhome and having a nice walking area and little parks, I think would benefit everybody. So I'd like to have this discussion in the future, agendize it. Let's start the vision.
Yeah, we just have to make sure to be clear that the majority of the people living in these homes are very low income, and they're also elderly. And so we have to definitely keep that under consideration if we're doing any sort of modifications. Like a townhome doesn't necessarily work very well upstairs for the elderly. But I mean, we should be learning from how they do it at Silver Peaks, because that's part of the same demographic that they're going to be serving as well. So yeah, we should definitely agendize this discussion for an actual council meeting, so we can have a strategic vision on what we want to do in the long term for Sunrise. But I don't see anything. I definitely think we should be able to identify grant funding to be able to fix a lot of those the tripping hazards. I do know, I haven't looked into it, but I do know the California JPIA, the Joint Powers Insurance Authority that we're a part of, they actually have funds for dealing with cracked sidewalks and those sorts of things. So that's another a potential source of funding there. But I think for the next year, this looks reasonable to me. Does it look reasonable to the other council members?
Yes.
Mayor Mahovey,
Yeah.
I would also like to look into the possibility of, once Silver Peaks is built and open, if we could use that as a transition area for people until we could get, or say 12 to 18 months until we could get something built on this property.
And then, I mean, also, I know there are discussions happening right now about veterans housing potentially going right in that area as well. And so as we're having those discussions, maybe that's a good venue to also kind of think holistically about that whole section of town, because that property butts up on one of the potential sites for the Wounded Warriors project, right?
Yes.
Kind of. Carrie, can I ask a quick question? And I know we want to agendize this for a meeting, but my question would be, for the people that own their own, you haven't been able, I don't think it's even legal to put restrictions on who they then sell to. Is that right?
To move into the mobile home park, they have to be pre-qualified through me.
Right,
So-
but let's say that the people who own their own places, they pass away. Are you saying that whoever moves in after that also needs to be pre-qualified?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Okay, so that does secure that in that way. Great. Thanks.
Okay, anything else on the Sunrise Mobile Home budget discussion for next year? All right, then shall we go back to sewer?
Yes, sorry, Elaine's not able to get in, and I think this listener is her number, so I was going to allow this number to participate to see if it's her. No, it won't let me. Elaine, can you hear us?
Good morning.
Okay.
My apologies. I think that I didn't get the right link.
I just sent it to you again, so if you want to try and get in, I can add you. All right, I did find my fund balance sheet, and the sewer fund as of fiscal close has 1.4 million fund balance. So when we look at the revenues, we're looking at 1.2 million in year one, 1.2 million in year two, 1.2 million, almost 1.3 million in year three, 1.3 million in year four, 1.3 million in year five. And the expenses go up, but we do have the fund balance to cover it. Fiscal year 21-22, we're looking at expenses of 2.1 million. The second year, we're looking at 1.1 million. In the third year, 1.2 million. And in the fourth year, 2.5 million. And in year five, 1.2 million. And again, my revenues are conservative.
Well, these revenues are just from rates, right?
Yeah.
And Destin, when is the next rate study supposed to kick in?
Yeah, exactly. So we will have another rate study that will start about a year from now and have new rate at the end of this current study ends in I believe the 22-23 year is the last year of it. So 23-24 new rates will be established.
Okay. Okay. And then, I mean, it seems that most of these, the costs are the same, except there are a couple of capital improvement projects and then an additional employee. Do you want to comment on those, Dustin?
Yeah, I do. So on the capital, there's some big numbers there, and we're being actually, conservative, I guess, but the majority of the stuff that goes to irrigation system for the new pasture out there should mostly be covered by NRCS funds and potentially Prop 1 funds. And so I put in the cost as worst case scenario. We probably will not pay any of that if things continue to go the direction they are. There's one capital project that's in there, but I believe the version that you all have does not have the update of the trunk line. The trunk line, I went through and revised that project. That was 1.4 million almost 2 years ago to a smaller project at about $500,000, which is really necessary to get done. DWP's compromise, and I don't blame you. I'm just saying they inadvertently hit that line twice now in the last few years, and it's the integrity of it is such that we could have, and I'm not saying we will, but we could have a backup there, and that would be a bad spot because we'd put everything in the canal. So, and I'm not trying to be scary or anything, but it's scary. It keeps me awake at night, and we'd like to at least get the process of rebuilding it from First Street to Johnson Drive, and that would include the canal crossing. And we have the funds. We as you see, we got some big expenses, but like I said, most of those, except for the purchase of land from LADWP for the pasture expansion, a lot of it's just going to be all covered by grants. And the DWP purchase is probably 2 or 3 years down the road.
Is that the expenditure that you have in 24-25?
Correct.
So that's the land purchase. Okay.
Yeah.
And so of course we don't know what it's going to be, what they're actually going to be charging us, but
yeah,
we have
that is
on there.
That's definitely our best estimate of what we've been told, somewhere between 1,000 and 2,000 an acre, and then divided with the district.
Mm-hmm.
So 600,000 is I'm hoping is a high number total, but I just put the 300 as half of that.
Okay, so the main expenditure next year would be the irrigation and the mini trunk line.
Yes,
and
correct.
And we're hoping to have at least the irrigation part paid for. We'll be getting grant funding to do that. So that still keeps the fund reserve healthy. And I guess one other question I have is the irrigation, we're doing all of that so that we can do a lot of nutrient capture for so that with the in joining forces with the Eastern Sierra Community Services District, so that we can do nutrient capture and be and not violate any like groundwater pollution laws. But that is kind of a somewhat temporary, and when I say temporary in this case, I mean like 1 or 2 decades temporary solution, because our plants in 1 or 2 decades will be about 100 years old. And we will be at that point needing a new plant. Are we going to start setting aside funds for that purpose in the coming years, or when should we start expecting to like set aside funds for that particular purpose?
I personally think the sooner the better. The problem is the fund balances in the sewer are somewhat lower than we anticipated. And the audit has found that out. We thought we had 1.5 million in reserves a year and a half ago and haven't spent very much. So through the audit, we found out we didn't. But yes, we need to, in the next rate study, at least set up a capital fund charge in there for replacement of the plants. And that's also part of our agreement with the district in the formation of the BAWA, that we would start having set aside for a new plant, and a single new plant, not 2.
Okay. And so we'll start looking at that after the next rate study, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I think that it would be prudent that once we get through this year with these lot of expenditures, that next year we may start creating a line item with some small amount to get it started, because you just never know when it's going to be forced upon us.
Any other comments or questions on sewer?
I guess just to tag in on that thought process, you know, as someone who's been poor most of her life, the idea that we want to start putting money away before worse comes to worse is probably, we should probably plan in advance and earlier than we think we need to.
Agreed, 100%. I mean, you don't like talking about it, but even a natural disaster such as an earthquake could force a schedule way ahead of time. And the other thing I'd like to add is I'm going to make contact with Larry Blaine, Bain, I'm sorry, our auditor, because water, as you'll find out in our next section, is very healthy. And there is probably the opportunity for sewer to borrow from water and pay it back with a plan to pay it back. But I'd like to find that out, because we have a lot more sewer projects going on than water by far. And we've actually, our rates the last few years have taken that into account. Water went down and sewer went up. So, you know, it's evident that if we can borrow money, and it sounds like, you know, at basically, you know, no interest borrowing from water to sewer, I think that could be another excellent idea.
I mean, the other thing we could consider is that we do have unfunded liabilities that are tied to water and sewer, don't we, Jenny? And so
Yes, we do.
we could,
Again, in this budget is just an estimate as to what it needs to be. I need to go through and figure out the final amounts that would be divided among the departments and funds.
Yeah, Jenny and I have been working on that, trying to, and it wouldn't, it's not a bad idea, Mayor Mahovey. Several years ago, when we did pay a large chunk, water and sewer put in 700,000 a piece into the unfunded liabilities, because they can easily be tracked to Public Works and water and sewer employees.
right. So that might also be something to consider as we're having a, how do we deal with the unfunded liability discussion, which will also come back to council.
No, it will.
Okay, then you want to talk to us about the water?
Alrighty, I'll go on. Currently in the water, we have a 3.6 million balance. And our revenue for year one, we're looking at 973,000. In year two, we're looking at 1 million. Year three, 1 million. Year four, 1 million. And year five, 1 million. And our expenses in year one would be 1.2. Year two, 867. Year three, 1.5. Year four, 1.1. And year five, 930,000. And here we are.
So these also have some capital improvement projects. Destin, do you want to just?
Yeah, yes, they do. So we're off of our capital improvement list, the Johnson Drive water main. It's an old 4-inch cast line that we're starting to have leaks more often on. That is scheduled for the 21-22 fiscal year for replacement. And then we'll skip a year, and then that large 670-ish, I apologize, I'm trying to get my computer moved around here. We have
620.
The West Line Street water line replacement. That water line has starting to get a lot more leaks. It varies between cast iron and old steel. and Caltrans will be doing their rehab project of Main and Line Street. So it'll be the opportunity to do that work right prior to the start of their project. So we'll save some costs in paving and stuff like that. But we're just trying to plan on getting rid of these problem water lines, one a year if they're smaller, and maybe, like I said, skipping a year with a big one coming up. But we do have the funds, obviously, to do that.
And one question I have with regards to some of when we are going to have a discussion to discuss how much to maintain in fund balances, is that particular to the general fund, or is that for these other funds as well? Because I mean,
our thinking has been to the general fund so far, but we probably need to do the same thing to these funds. And
well, I can see the benefit to both, or to only having it be the general fund, because when we're talking about water and sewer, a lot of these projects are a substantial portion of the typical budget for those, for the water and sewer funds. So if we limit ourselves to like a small cap, but I guess, yeah, sorry, you were saying, Ron.
I think typically larger municipalities with larger budgets will be in the 20 to 25% range of their annual budget for a recommended reserve fund. Our situation, I think, is a little different. So I think I'll be recommending, we have like a $9 million budget. I'd be recommending a 33% reserve, which is $3 million. This past experience with COVID and our budgeting, I think, has illustrated that that minimum amount is probably justified. And as of the audit completion, as of last June 30th in 2020, our general fund balance was $3,289,000. So we're, depending on how much we had to use out of that, which is not as much as we anticipated for this past year, we'll be fairly close to that recommendation. Of course, you have to adopt it, but that's kind of where we are.
Okay. Any comments, questions on water? Nope. And let's move on to COPS.
Alrighty.
Here's a budget that doesn't adjust for inflation.
COPS has a balance of 230,000. Let's go.
You just passed it.
Oh, did I pass it?
You're
Oh,
right there.
thank you. Minimize this. Sorry, I'm trying to hide it so you guys can see it. And their estimated revenue is 100,000. Last year they brought in 150, so it's just a low estimate. And then down here, really what they're looking for is capital equipment replacement. But I'll let Josh speak on that.
Kind of like I mentioned yesterday, that you'll see that the previous years there were costs in special department supplies and other areas that we asked to transfer back into the general fund. Those are daily operational issues. Some of the clerical stuff, the lights and power, those things, putting those back into the general fund so that if we are audited, we are following what the grant was designed for. And then turn using the COPS grant for purchasing of vehicles, safety equipment. We have various safety equipment that's starting to age and we're going to need to look at replacing. We need to look at, as our our environment is changing, look at some different options for how we do policing, and some of that will come with equipment needs. And this is a perfect fund to pull those purchases from. We just kind of learned what our actual cops balance was this last couple of days. We got a true number, and it's higher than we anticipated, but we also budgeted for a vehicle for this current year. We have not purchased that yet. We would like to, however, we're also looking at some new purchasing options to kind of reduce our cost of vehicles. And so we kind of put that on hold for a minute, but we also have a couple patrol vehicles that are in desperate need of being replaced this upcoming year. And this fund would help fund those vehicles and taking it directly from here rather than from the general fund. So,
and so Josh, just for a little background, so this is funding that we get from the state through this AB 1913. And so we don't actually have any say in how much funding comes in. It's just whatever the state gives us. And then it is, it's meant to be, there's like a list of items for what the funding can be used for. Is that correct?
Correct. The money, our deposits is kind of a guessing game every year. You just wait to see what they give you. It's been more or less pretty consistent in the neighborhood, but you don't get an exact amount until you receive the funds. But it's designed to help first responders, you know, the frontline officers, whether it be vehicles, safety equipment. Some agencies have used it for crime analysts to fund that salary, but it's designed to give a supplement law enforcement for the stuff they need to effectively do their job. And that's why we can justify vehicles and safety equipment, different tools that are necessary to do our job or better our job. And that was one of our discussions, that the computers that we're looking at, the MDC Mobile Data Computer Project, would come out of this account should our other option not happen. And so we're just looking to use this money to improve what we need to function as a police department without having to go back to the general fund.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see what are the stipulations that it can't be used for, in particular, especially because we don't want to get audited and get slapped any sort of a fine, and so we definitely want to make sure that we're adhering to that.
Right.
Comments, questions from the council? Scrolling through.
I guess I'll just reiterate that I think that this is an interesting area to kind of look through and see, you know, maybe what other agencies are doing, who's getting away with what we can put in here that will help the officers. And if it gets it out of general fund, that'd be even better.
Can we use it to pay for part of a building? I'm sure we could justify some of it, but anyway.
I mean, a new jail would help, right? Help the officers having a better building. We could spin it.
It's all about how you write it.
Okay, there are no other questions. Let's look at this giant amortization plan.
Yes, this was just pulled off of our CalPERS payment plans for 2021. But this probably does not keep in mind that we changed our payment plan for years 1920, because historically we would always pay the yearly payment in advance the beginning of the year. And last year, due to COVID, we changed to the monthly plan because we were trying to save our cash flow. So this will change because of COVID. But this is just an estimate as to the current plan. If we make the yearly payments under the miscellaneous first tier, this is what we're looking at. And then if we do 15 years and then 10 years.
And so effectively, the first column, so our actual unfunded liability for anybody looking at this is you basically add up the first number in every column. And that's where it ends up being on order, what, like over $10 million. And so if we don't do any sort of a payment plan, then we could have all of our unfunded liability paid off by 2040, where we end up paying about $7 million in interest during that time. Or if we change our payment plans to be able to actually pay it off with regular payments, then it would definitely go down. And so, yeah, I'd be curious to see, but all of these these are the CalPERS plans, so they all assume a 7% interest on the unfunded liability, right?
Right.
That's correct.
So I would definitely prioritize looking at something that where we could get a much lower interest rate to do it.
And we're going to be developing that over the next few weeks and months. Another option.
Cool. Any comments, questions? I don't see any. Anything else that people want to discuss budget related for next year? Karen Kong, I just saw you raise your hand.
I just wanted to ask, it occurred to me, as things often do in the middle of the night last night, we did not put in here in the 5-year plan sharing a code enforcement person. Are we still thinking that that would be a good use of some dollars?
I was going to let Ron speak. I'll speak to that. I think that you're right with our new nuisance ordinance and stuff like that, that partnering with the county, with their code enforcement officer is a great idea. We met with Clint Quilter and Clint was on the same page. He agreed that it would be a great position to share. So I think as it becomes more of an issue and we have more code enforcement, then that option is definitely out there.
I guess the question is, do we want to include it for the next year's budget?
I don't think it would be a 50-50 share. I think our percentage would be less, maybe in the 20 to 30% range. We'll look into that.
I guess I just think if the public knew that we had someone who was actually going to do this stuff, that they would maybe feel, not that you're not doing this stuff, Ron, but someone who dedicated to, that's not doing it as an aside, that maybe things would kind of be rolling in and we could get some stuff cleaned up quicker that way.
Good. I made a note.
Thank you, guys.
Cool. Well, I want to definitely thank all the staff for all of your work, especially looking at budgets beyond just next year. I, for one, thought it was extremely informative and really good to highlight, not just getting a snapshot of what's going to be coming the next year, but getting a full picture of how we really need to be making some longer term decisions and planning for that. And so I definitely want to thank all of you guys for your hard work on getting this together. We did have lots of discussion, and I think a lot of big agenda items came out of it. And yeah, we'll look forward to the revised, well, the plan for the next year's budget, which I guess we'll get in a matter of like 4 weeks, probably. I don't know when.
Absolutely. Thank
Yeah.
you very much, Mayor Mahovey, and I appreciate all the work that Jenny and the departments have done on this. It's been great.
And
I don't see any other public comments for other discussion, and I have not seen any raised hands. Jenny, have you seen anything?
There are
Ron?
no raised hands.
Okay.
okay. Then I guess we'll adjourn until Monday, May 10th, at the regular for our regular meeting at 6 p.m. Have a great weekend, everyone.
Hi, everyone.
Everyone.